What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Packers social media accounts. Weston Hockwitz here, joined alongside my colleague at Packers.com, Mike Spofford. This, I guess, technically would be called the schedule release Q&A, live Q&A. We intended to do it originally on Thursday. I was out of town, so here we are on a nice Friday morning.
Your fault.
And it was funny, when we were doing the intro, I was ready to go with Welcome to Packers Preview.
Right, yeah.
But that's not what this is today.
When we sit like this is supposed to be. But we are previewing the 2024 season-ended schedule, yes.
Mike and I will be here for the next 15 minutes or so. We're actually going to take your questions on X, Facebook, and YouTube. You can submit those. Our social department will ship those through over to me. Until we let those kind of populate, I do want to open up, Michael, just by getting some of your first impressions with this schedule. Let's start off, if we may, because we've talked a lot about just pick a random game, but let's start with the home side of this thing for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
The first 4 home games, all at noon for the Packers.
Woohoo!
If it stays that way, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's always subject to change with some of these things, but after, I think it was 2 years ago, I think there was one noon home game the entire season.
Yeah.
Looking at that aspect of it, you're going to Brazil, you're opening Brazil, but after that, it kind of, you have a little bit more of the home cooking flavor.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's something about noon games at Lambeau Field that are just sort of, this is how it's kind of supposed to be. Take nothing away from the 325 when you got a national audience, or obviously under the lights, it's a different atmosphere at Lambeau. But when it's a noon on Sunday at Lambeau Field and the crowd kind of starts filling in at 10 o'clock, 10:30, it feels right. That's what Green Bay Packers football is about.
The second half of the schedule, a lot of primetime games. Again, we'll talk about the away games here in a second, but the Miami Dolphins will be coming here for Thanksgiving. Only the third time in franchise history the Packers will be hosting on Thanksgiving. It'll be at 7:20 p.m. Central Start Time. And then also at the end of that 4 straight game stretch of primetime action, the New Orleans Saints coming here for Monday Night Football.
Yeah, it's interesting. The Packers will not be on Monday Night Football until 2 nights before Christmas, which is a long time to wait for a Monday night game. But, that Thursday night Thanksgiving at home at Lambeau Field, hopefully it goes a little better than the last time the Packers hosted Thanksgiving, which was rain and a terrible performance against the Bears. A great ceremony for Brett Favre, and Bart Starr was in attendance, and that was the highlight of the night. The rest of the night was pretty forgettable. Hopefully there's a little bit more positives to remember when the Miami Dolphins are here on Thanksgiving night.
Quickly looking over at the away games for this season, Michael, obviously we've talked a lot about opening in Sao Paulo against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah.
But, I mean, to me, again, very balanced. There's only 2 back-to-back games where the Packers are on the road, and when that happens, it'll actually have a 10-day difference between the two of them, between the second Thursday night game against the Detroit Lions and then traveling for a Sunday night matchup against the Seattle Seahawks. I think the biggest game that I had circled off of this whole thing was Week 11. You're traveling to Chicago. That'll be the first meeting with Caleb Williams-led Chicago Bears. Just some of your first impressions on the away side of the schedule. Yeah,
it is kind of interesting that the Packers are waiting until all the way after the Week 10 bye before they face the Bears for the first time in the season. So that's a little odd. But also, I don't know if you saw this, but the Bears have all 6 of their division games within the last 8 games of the season.
Seriously?
Yeah, that's the way their schedule worked out. It's crazy. So it's even more strange from the Bears side of things. But yeah, as far as the road games, Brazil, the Sao Paulo game, and then and going to Los Angeles in early October, SoFi Stadium. So those will be 2 new stadiums that we haven't been to yet to add to the list. And then the back-to-back primetime road games, 10 days apart, yes, but the Thursday night in Detroit, the Sunday night in Seattle, you got a feeling that those are going to have some pretty significant implications, perhaps for all the teams involved.
Absolutely. He's Mike Spofford. I'm Wes Hockwitz. We are here to take your questions again on X, Facebook, and YouTube. I'll open it up with this one, Mike. This one comes from Callum Stevenson on Facebook. Which game do you think is the hardest for the Packers this upcoming season?
The hardest for the Packers this upcoming season. I have to say it's probably going to be the playoff rematch against the 49ers, even though it's at home, which should work to the Packers' advantage. But Packers' track record in recent years against the 49ers, it hasn't been good. The Packers have actually done all right in the regular season against the Niners. It's been the playoff games that have really been tough. But that one's going to be a big one. I think everybody expects the Packers to continue to be a team on the rise. Everybody expects the 49ers to still be who they've been the last couple years. That's going to be a big one at Lambeau on the Sunday before Thanksgiving.
The other one I actually kind of have my eye on a little bit is the Miami Dolphins game, because one, you're going to come after, you have them back-to-back at home, so that is the nice side of this thing.
Yeah.
But a 3:25 Central start time on Sunday against the 49ers, you have mentioned no matter what the scenario is going to be, that is going to be a hotly contested, difficult football game. And then you have to come back. It will be a night game on Thursday, so you'll get the full day to rest, if you want to even call it that, before you take on the Dolphins. The biggest oddity I felt like, as unique as it is to have all those primetime games back-to-back, the biggest oddity to me is the fact that 2 years after facing the Miami Dolphins on Christmas and traveling down to Miami to have that game, now you're getting the Dolphins on Thanksgiving here for an uncommon opponent. And this stuff will happen now more with the rotation against the AFC, but still very bizarre that an uncommon opponent like that, they're going to end up playing on back-to-back on holidays within 2 years of each other.
Yeah, on big holidays, the national audience, the whole thing. That Christmas game down in Miami obviously was really big at that time for the Packers in 2022. Kept them alive in the playoff hunt. Was a game that not a lot of people expected the Packers to win. This one be interesting to see what kind of weather there is on that Thanksgiving night. Obviously, a team from Florida coming up to play in the cold. Although there won't be anything as cold for the Miami Dolphins as what they experienced in Kansas City last January in the playoffs. That was brutal. So they I don't think they'll be necessarily intimidated by anything in the cold after what those guys went through last year.
I never like doing nicknames, right? But I'm going to do one here because this one's just too good. This is from Chris Cat Daddy Evans on Facebook. If you're willing to put Cat Daddy in your Facebook handle, it's good with me.
All right.
How do you rate this year's Packers draft compared to last year's? Any hits or misses? Last year's is pretty iconic, Mike. I mean, in terms of the 1 year return on investment, it was almost unprecedented. Now, 1 year, whether it's good, negative, in between, 1 year does not make a draft class.
Yeah.
But when you talk about getting off to a fast start, the Packers ended up needing those rookies to play a lot quicker, a lot sooner, and really kind of beyond their years right from year one. I don't know in so many cases if this year's rookie class is going to be put in that situation, barring a rash of injuries, but to me, I looked at it as you had a really strong draft in 2022, you had a good one in 23, and then here you are in 24. Great opportunity to build upon that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, although I don't think the numbers will be as much in terms of the number of players, the number of snaps and everything that the draft class will play this year compared to last year, but we're looking at a situation where we could see whether it's Javon Bullard or Evan Williams or Katana Oladapo at safety, Edgerrin Cooper or Tyron Hopper at linebacker, you're looking at a couple of probably defensive starters coming out of this draft class. And then when you look at things on the offensive side, does Jordan Morgan, the first-round pick, possibly win a starting job in training camp and through the preseason? How much of a workload does Marshawn Lloyd earn as a rookie? Does he potentially move into a number 2 spot behind Josh Jacobs, or is that maybe for down the road, not necessarily his rookie year? All those things have to get sorted out, but I do think we're looking at a draft class that in some way, shape, or form is going to make an impact in 2024. We'll just have to see how big it is.
J. Cole on Facebook. J. Cole. That won't mean as much to you as it does me. I think week 1 against the Eagles will be the hardest game. That's something to be said for that. I mean,
Might be.
12 hours, 13-hour time, travel time to get down there. It's going to be a unique environment, a first-time environment. Even though you're basically not shifting the time change as much as when you went to London, I still feel like Matt LaFleur, his coaches, they're going to learn a lot from that experience. It's going to be an interesting way to start this thing out, man, and almost unprecedented. I joked with somebody that I had to do a speaker series event in Milwaukee the other day, and they were like, they're really playing in Brazil? I'm like, yeah, this is the thing that I think is the most comical. The Green Bay Packers, in our lifetime, this will never be topped. The Green Bay Packers were the last team to play in London out of the 32, and they're the first team to play in South America.
Right, the first one to go. I do think that's going to be a difficult game, not only because of the travel, and yes, it's basically the same for both teams, although it won't be because there are going to be some other travel issues with us coming from Green Bay. But the opponent, I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles are no slouch, and that's a squad that's going to be looking to bounce back from what really was a borderline collapse at the end of last season, where they didn't even come close, to defending their NFC Championship from the previous year. But the positive of that, as Matt LaFleur has pointed out, is that it would have been a road game on your schedule at the Link in Philly, and instead it's going to be in Brazil, where I think, similar to London a couple of years ago, I think that crowd is going to be probably 2/3, if not 3/4 Packers fans in Sao Paulo. So that's another interesting thing when you look at this road schedule. So with the Sao Paulo game, you only have 7 true road games. And when you think about how many fans in California are going to show up in LA, if it's anything like the game in 2018 that was at the LA Coliseum, there will be a ton of Packer fans there. And then the Jacksonville game, where anytime the Packers play on the road in Florida, there are a ton of Packer fans that show up.
I already got some ticket requests.
I'm sure I'm going to be getting them as well. But you look at the way this falls, and there are only a handful of games that are going to feel like true road games, hostile environment type of things for the Packers this year. So hopefully that's something they can take advantage of.
This is a couple other things here. Let's jump into the quotes here or the questions. The one thing I got to say that I find that's funny about the Jaguars game, just once. I mean, no, October weather in Green Bay is great in October. I want to play. We got the Miami game in 51-degree weather, and us being in an air-conditioned press box that did not have even the option for heat.
Right.
I just want a Jacksonville game in December just once. That's all I'm asking for. October is going to be beautiful. I'm not ripping on that at all. But my first game I ever covered for the Green Bay Packers as a member of Packers.com was 91-degree starting temperature, week 1. Randomly, the Packers play the Jaguars.
And we were doing this preview thing down on the field with our sport coats
J-Ron
on
Elliott said it was mouthing I'm sorry to me, wearing a suit, drenching in sweat.
Yeah,
it was incredible.
Yeah,
all right.
That was something else.
A couple more minutes here. Mike Spofford, Wes Hodkiewicz, our Packers schedule release live Q&A. Caleb McNeil on Facebook says, I think the Packers will do better than last year. I hope you're right as well, Caleb. That's a salient point. Ricky Ricardo on Facebook asking, how would you grade our running backs this season? Jacobs, Dillon, and Lloyd.
Well, this is actually a question that I answered, a couple of questions that I answered in this morning's Insider Inbox column. A lot of people are trying to pick the roster and set the pecking order at running back behind Jacobs, before there's even been a padded practice, before there's even been a preseason game. There's a lot of stuff we have to learn here, and this is what I mentioned in the column. How much improved will Emmanuel Wilson be from his rookie season to his second season? How much will Marshawn Lloyd be able to handle in terms of the workload as a rookie, which a lot of that will depend on whether he can prove himself as a pass protector, because if you're going to play running back in this offense, you have to be able to protect Jordan Love. You've got to protect number 10. And then in what ways does the coaching staff potentially want to use A.J. Dillon? What kind of role do they envision for him, and how is this all going to sort itself out? We don't know. There's no reason to try to figure it out right now. Let's let training camp and the preseason and whatnot sort itself out, and maybe even the first few games of the regular season before this offense figures out exactly what its backfield is going to look like, because that's the one spot on offense. Last year almost the whole offense was going through this transition. The one spot on offense that is going through a transition now in 2024 is the running back position. So it's going to take some time before we really get a handle on what that looks like.
But it's exciting. I think Lloyd is a perfect complement to what Dillon and Jacobs do. You and I said it even going into that draft. You had to find somebody that could be that extra guy in that room that he can build and develop. I think it's very exciting. He's going to be able to learn from Jacobs. He's a guy that he even said himself, he feels like it's someone that he kind of idolizes his game after. Different types of backs, but obviously a good mentor to have. And now he gets to work with him in Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean, Lloyd, what I'm curious to see at his size, the 220-pound running back, and the speed that he has running the 4.46, I believe it was at the combine, what does that speed look like when we see it against NFL competition in the preseason games, when he first gets into games. What does that speed at 220 pounds look like at this level?
Yeah, and I was actually, for the story I'm working on Monday, I was talking to his high school coach yesterday, and he said, it's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary thing to watch. Everybody saw the 61-yard touchdown that he had during his time in high school at DeMatha. If you talk to his mom, you talk to his coaches, everybody has seen that multiple times.
Yeah.
Nobody was surprised by it. That's the type of athleticism, that's the type of burst, and obviously that type of size that he brings to the NFL game. Okay, what do you expect from our receivers this year, Mike? Kind of an open-ended question. That's from David Fish on Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, this could go any number of ways, and what I mean by that is we saw opportunity and production across the board last year at the wide receiver position, all the way into guys late in the season like Malik Heath and Bo Melton getting opportunities and making plays and helping out this offense. But a lot of that was because of injuries, because of the guys in front of them getting hurt and other guys needing to fill in. I mean, if Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, and Dontavian Wicks all stay healthy, then that would be great, but it could also mean that some of these guys that we saw produce last year, they may not get a whole lot of snaps.
Right.
There are only so many snaps in a game. There's only one ball to go around. So what I like is that the Packers proved last year that with the depth and with the playmaking that they have, they can withstand an injury or two and rotate guys in and make things happen. But you'd like to see Christian Watson be healthy for a whole season because defenses have to play you differently in that regard. Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, you expect both of those guys to really make some progress in year two and be able to make some plays. I think they're going to get the opportunity to do so.
All right, last couple minutes here on our Packers schedule release that is kind of turning into like an off-season Packers preview throughout the course of this thing, which is fine. We're here to answer questions. You have them. We'll do our best to tackle them. Bob Sarver, S-A-R-V-E-R. What would that be? Sarver.
Yeah.
How will our edge players do with their hand in the ground in the new 4-3? Well, first off, you have two guys in Rashawn Gary and Lucas Van Ness. That was their starting point when you go back to their college careers.
Absolutely.
And in some ways, they're getting back to their roots a little bit. I honestly think, however you use Preston Smith, he's a bigger-bodied outside linebacker to begin with. I don't think that's going to be an issue. The biggest thing, Mike, you and I have talked about this. This is not 2009 anymore. Shout out to Mac Miller. This is a much different type of game, and it's not about 3-4. It's not about 4-3. It's about getting to the quarterback. And honestly, if you want any further evidence of that, any example of that, just look how they used Lucas Van Ness at the end of last season. He started putting his hand in the ground more and ended up having some more success.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with what Jeff Hafley is going to do, when you draft a linebacker like Edgerrin Cooper, who had 8 sacks as an off-the-ball linebacker his final season in college, you draft a safety like Evan Williams, who had 4.5 sacks as a defensive back at Oregon in college. You're going to see the development of packages and schemes and whatnot to try to generate pressure from lots of different angles, and that could mean Rashawn Gary, lining up inside in certain passing situations.
Right.
Preston Smith possibly doing that. We know Lucas Van Ness can certainly do that, and guys like Kenny Clark and Devontae Wyatt are the interior rushers that the Packers are going to be counting on there. So it's going to come from all different angles, and much like we talked about last year with the offense and with Matt LaFleur and the offensive coaches and all these young guys trying to figure out what do these guys do best. There isn't as much youth, obviously, on the defensive side, but Jeff Hafley and his defensive coaches, many of whom are new, they're going to be doing the same thing with those guys on the defensive side, figuring out what they do best, what are their calling cards, what can they be relied upon for, and then they're going to build defensive game plans around that as the season goes along.
Theory on Facebook, what have you seen and heard about the cornerback, Eric Stokes, so far? Where do you expect him to be on the depth chart week one? Week one's a long way away. But what I will say is all reports have been very positive about Stokes. We'll talk to him next week.
Yeah.
We'll hear what he has to say, probably coming back off of this test studies that they had at UW-Madison, obviously everything they're trying to do there to shore things up with the soft tissue injuries. But if you're going off just what the coaches are saying from what we're hearing in terms of what they're doing in the first couple phases of the offseason program, things have been really good for Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like things are positive, and I think the expectation is that Eric Stokes is going to play a significant role on this defense in 2024. Exactly what that is and what that looks like, how you sort out the cornerback depth chart and the packages behind, obviously Jair Alexander is your number one cornerback, but after that, Keyshawn Nixon is the nickel. Some of these new safeties might be able to play nickel, and you've got Stokes, and you've got Valentine, you've got Ballantine, all these different guys that potentially are into that mix, and then another rookie corner in Kalen King from Penn State. We'll see what he can do as well.
Thomas Greeny on YouTube. Happy Friday, Wes and Mike. Wes, thoughts on Tom Grassi making the schedule release video? Also, how many wins do you think the Packers are getting this year? I can answer the former of that. I'm not going to start making predictions on the Packers season on, May 17th. But Tom being a part of it, that was an amazing thing. I loved his appearance. He did a tremendous job putting that together for us, shipping it our way, us incorporating it. I'm glad we were able to bring it back full circle. Tom obviously had the big response back in 2020 to the Packers taking Jordan Love. Did mention at the end of that, though, he was excited about Jordan. And then now, obviously, being able to play off that and have some fun with Jordan. It was a fun schedule release video, and I'm super excited that Tom was a part of it. Facebook. Stefan Huddy, who would be your dream schedule release video?
Who
would be your dream schedule release video? Who would be a part of it for a cameo?
Oh, I see. I understand the question now. For a cameo, Mike Holmgren.
Oh, that would have been fun. Yeah. Maybe the next one.
Yeah. Let's get Mike Holmgren in this.
Mike Holmgren could be cool.
Yeah, let's get him in the next schedule.
Honestly, mine was.
We'll try to promote his Hall of Fame candidacy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's been in that coach contributor category, and hopefully at some point maybe he gets pushed forward as a finalist for the Hall of Fame. So maybe we can try to help with our.
I'm sure that would go a long way.
With a goofy schedule video.
Don Mikowski, I think honestly was probably my dream scenario, and Duke Bauer, credit to everybody, and STN, everybody that was a part of it. They made that happen. It was cool to see.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll close on this. This will be the last one we'll take. YouTube. RCHI, I don't know how to even pronounce that. Clown suits or we riot. Just kidding. That announcement video was so much fun. How fun was it to see it all together? I said this to you on Wednesday when we finally got the final thing a couple hours before it went out, and I was just so dang proud of it. I thought it was the coolest video. It's like I compared it to baking bread. There were times where I'm looking at it, I'm like, I don't know what this thing is going to be.
Right.
But once you finally saw it come in the last form, I know there's not a lot of national people who are going to be like, oh, wow, amazing video. But for Green Bay Packer fans, I think the point of it, we wanted, whether you're 15 or 60, 80, you could find something in that video to enjoy, and I think they accomplished that goal.
Yeah, that video was a video for Packers fans.
Yes.
It was not a video for a national audience where they might not quite understand everything that went into it. That was a video for Packers fans with, I don't like to necessarily use the phrase inside jokes, but it kind of
was Easter eggs.
It kind of
yes, there were a lot of Easter eggs.
It kind of was that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope the Packers fans enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed dressing up as clowns.
I hope they enjoyed it more than that, because Steven made a good joke to Carmen on Twitter the other day, because he said Wes was the hardest one to book for it, and that was the truth. I was the one that was the least on board with any of it. I think they probably had an easier time getting Lil Wayne than they did me, but we got through it. He's Mike Spofford. I'm Wes Hockwitz. We thank you so much for joining us, our schedule release Q&A. I think this finally is the end of this never-ending week as it relates to the schedule. We will have tons of content next week, though, for organized team activities, the start of that, and maybe one or two more features coming out of the draft class as well. But until next time, for Mike, I'm Wes. We'll see you later.